And therefore she decided that secretively she would be discreet, and she would come to the well at a time when no one else was there. She was perhaps embarrassed, bitter. She had possibly accepted her situation or lived in denial. She didn't possibly want anyone to know about what was going on in her mind. Maybe she thought, yes, I've made so many mistakes in my life, and this is it. There is nothing I can do about it. So the only thing I could do is to just cover it up and act as if nothing has happened. But Jesus was standing at that well, and he went beyond every social barrier. It was unacceptable for a Jew to speak to a Samaritan. Certainly not drink from the same vessel owned by a Samaritan woman. But Jesus went beyond every such social barrier. And not only that, he went beyond everything anyone could have, because he knew the depths of her heart. He knew everything that she had ever done. And yet, he did not condemn her. Yet, he offered her life-giving waters. He wanted to bring her a solution because he genuinely loved her. He knew her. He knew everything about her, yet he loved her. And I believe that today, many of us can identify with this woman from Samaria. You might say, oh, well, I'm not like her. I have lived a good life. There is nothing wrong as such that I have done. I have done good. I have done so much of charity. I have lived a good life. But I'm telling you today, there are in so many ways we can identify with this woman from Samaria. We may have come to the conclusion that we have made so many mistakes, and that's it. I have got what I deserve. There is no hope. I am a sinner. That's about it. Or we may be facing some kind of an empty well within us. It may not necessarily be a deep well of sin, but there may be nevertheless an empty well. Perhaps an empty well of sickness. We have possibly run to so many doctors yet found no solution. It may be even an empty well of disappointment, of hurt from the past. Or it may be an empty well of meaninglessness. Of course, for all intents and purposes, everything seems fine in my life. Anyone looking at me would think it's perfect. But I know that I am trying to mask this emptiness by being busy, because I don't want to deal with it. I possibly live in denial about this empty well in my life. I believe every one of us have an empty well. But what have we done with this well? The same Jesus that offered these waters, these living waters to this Samaritan woman, is offering the same living waters for us today. It is today that we decide what we do with these empty wells in our lives. Today, I want to share with you a 4A-step solution. A 4A-step solution to draw out the living waters that Jesus has for us. And I assure you, your life would never be the same again. The Samaritan woman's life was completely transformed. She was not the same anymore. We see it because she says later on, that the same woman who wanted to hide her life went out in the open in verses 28 and 29 and said, look here, this is a man who told me everything I ever did. Her life was not the same again. And this is the living water that Jesus offers you and me today. The first A step is accept that you have an empty well. We see in John chapter 4, verses 10 to 12, as we read, Jesus steers the conversation in such a way by asking this Samaritan woman about whether she wants this living water. Yet the woman did not seem to understand what Jesus was talking about. But I believe the first step is for us to identify that we actually do have a need. That it is not just the day-to-day obligations that we have, that we try to cover up everything that's going on within us. I need to accept that there is an empty well in my life. It may be an empty well like this woman. It may be bad habits in our lives that we just don't seem to be able to get over. It may be the mistakes of our past. Or it may be some kind of a sickness, or some pain, a hurt, a difficulty. And we have tried all this time to cover it up, to hide it. We don't want anyone else to know. I don't want to know myself. But the first step is to identify that there is a need. There is a need deep within me. I may not have even realized it perhaps because I have covered it up for so many years. But let's face it, what is your well today? Is it empty? So the first step is accept that you have an empty well. The second step is acknowledge the gift of God and the giver. In John chapter 4, verse 10, Jesus said, "If thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, Give me to drink, thou wouldest have asked." The question is, do we know this gift of God? As much as the Samaritan woman had to accept that she had an empty well, Jesus also said that she had to accept or acknowledge this gift of God and who it was who was giving it. We are so used to having to earn everything that we receive that understanding this concept of a gift from God is a little too much. But as Ephesians chapter 2 verses 8 and 9 says, "For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast." We need to acknowledge that we can only be saved by this gift of God. It is entirely the grace of God. But the question is, what do I need to be saved from? I need to be saved from the murky waters within that deep well within me. That well will only bring about eternal death. But Jesus offers us this gift of living waters that will quench that thirst within us, living waters that would wipe away that emptiness within us. Living waters that is the only solution to this deep well within us. And the giver of that gift is only Jesus Christ. In John chapter 3 verse 16, it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." As we read earlier, we are saved by grace through faith. What we need is to believe in the giver of this living water. I need to believe that it is only he who can wash away that emptiness, who can fill me up with his living water, who can bring about a lasting solution to this emptiness, whatever it may be. The second step, as I said, is acknowledge the gift of God and the giver. The third step is ask him for the gift. It is not enough for me to simply accept that I have an empty well and to acknowledge the gift of God and the giver, but I need to take it a step further and ask God for this gift of living water. In John chapter 4 verses 10 and 15 as we read, Jesus answered and said to her that if she knew what this gift was and who the giver was, she would have asked, And later we see that this Samaritan woman asks Jesus in verse 15 for this water.